was kind of an interesting. I don't know how that was manipulated. It could be AI for all I know. But I originally tried to crop out part of the words so you so you wouldn't know exactly what was written on it. But yeah, it looked like a big eyeball out in space. But it did end up, the title came through. In Proverbs 15:3, the eyes of the Lord are where? In every place, beholding the evil and the good. In 1 Samuel 16:7, but the Lord said unto Samuel, look not on his countenance or on the height of his stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord seeth not as man seeth. For man looketh on the outward appearance, but the Lord looketh on the heart. So the Lord sees everything, not just outward appearance, but he sees inward, inside intentions, the thoughts and processes of our mind. What is our motivation for decisions we make and choices that we pursue? He doesn't just see an outward. In Job 34:21, for his eyes are upon the ways of man, and he seeth all his goings. So when I look at that image, and hopefully it'll make sense why I chose this a little bit later, but no matter where we go, no matter what we're doing, and no matter what we think our intentions are, who sees everything? God. He sees everything. I could try and present myself one way before people. I could have myself convinced of certain things of a certain way. But bottom line, God knows everything. Even if my intentions are askew, or God forbid, I'm misrepresenting myself. I'm representing it one way, but acting a different way. I'm not hiding anything from an all-knowing God. And I thought about that. If I surveyed everybody here, we would all raise our hand, I would hope, and say we understand. We all have an intellectual understanding, and hopefully we have a deeper understanding too, that God knows everything. God is omnipotent, he's all-powerful, and he's all-knowing. But I thought about this, but how, and I'm putting it on me first, I'm thinking about this question. How often do I really think about the need for me to be very clear and upfront about myself with the Lord? God will see our intentions. I may have positive intentions and positive goals, but am I honest about myself? Am I honest before God and saying, well, I have these intentions and I have these hopes and I have these goals and I have these dreams or I have these ambitions, but am I really doing what I need to be doing to accomplish any of them? I have to be honest with that before God. And when I thought about, we all have this head knowledge, and hopefully we have a heart knowledge too, that God is all-knowing. But how often do I question myself? Danny, are you really being clear? Because whether or not I'm being clear doesn't change the fact that what? He still knows. But am I being open and upfront and clear before him? He may know everything, but I still have a responsibility to talk to him and seek him and be open. And I thought about some verses that I'll read when I think about that concept. I understand that God knows and sees everything. But if I'm not honest with myself, what good can be accomplished from acknowledging he knows everything? There's nothing. I have to be honest with myself. Again, you can have goals and ambitions and dreams. You can have, whatever you want to call it. You can have all kinds of stuff. But if I'm not open about where I really am and who I am as an individual, how can I really think that God's going to bless and direct me in those ambitions and those goals? There's nothing wrong with admitting you have areas where you need to improve. That's just life. Personally, I've just learned in life, it's okay to not understand something and admit it. It's okay to need help and ask for it. If I can do that in my natural life, am I being that level of clear with God too? Because, some people struggle asking for help. That is an issue for some people. And some people talk about it. They're like, I don't want to sound like I don't know what I'm doing. So you'd rather look like you don't know what you're doing? Because, honey, you may think you're going to sound like it, but you're going to prove it right when you don't ask for help. You're going to go ahead and look like it, and not only will you sound like it later. It's just going to be what it is. So asking for help is being honest with yourself. That's just one example. So I thought about that need. God already sees everything, but I can't just rely on that. I have to make sure I'm being honest with myself and what he sees in my life. So am I doing that? In Matthew 7:17, now, we got to think, especially those of us who've been here most of our lives, we got to think of one person. And some who've been here a shorter time, you may too. In Matthew 7:17. As soon as I read it, ask and it shall be given you. Seek and you shall find. They're already giggling. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Who did I think of? And Eldreth. She'd love to put that in prayer. But read it again. Ask and it shall be given you. Now, God already knows everything, but what were we still instructed to do? Ask. Seek and ye shall find. Well, he already knows where it is, but what was I instructed to do? Seek. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. Well, he already knows what door of opportunity I would love to have open. What does it say to do? Knock. God knows everything I need. He knows everything I desire. He knows all of my goals and ambitions. And those vary, whether it be personal, professional, spiritual, whatever those things are. He already knows it all. But when I think about the thoughts, and something I actually, well, there's reasons my thoughts went this way. But I have a duty. This is what I apparently needed reminding of. I have a duty and responsibility to ask, to seek, and to knock. It's not just relying on the fact that he knows. I'm thankful that he knows. But do I put some effort behind the ambitions and things that I need? Am I willing to change if I need to change to accomplish those goals and ambitions? Am I being honest about myself? Or am I just expecting him to know and I'm assuming everything's okay with me? Well, sometimes, have you ever been showed you need to change something? That's just part of the human condition. And work, sometimes you may be told to do something differently. It's not because someone's being mean. There's better ways to do a job. Now, I could persist in doing it my way, and I may be ineffective. Well, I need to change my attitude. I have a duty to actively seek his guidance, his understanding, and to seek good at his hands. It's okay to have goals and ambitions, but what if I need to alter them? What if my goals and ambitions don't line up with the exact way that God would intend them to be for me in my life? I could just rely on the fact, well, he knows everything. He knows I want this, and I'm just going to pursue, and surely, I'll just trust everything's going to work out. Well, what if I need to self-reflect? What if I'm not really being honest with where I am? Or I'm not really being honest with myself and my intentions? Because I'll talk about something later. It's very easy to get goals, and it's good to have goals. It's good to have dreams. It's good to have work ethic and to pursue things. There's nothing wrong with that. But I need to make sure they're in line with God's plan for my life. And if he shows me differently, I need to be very aware. I got to be honest with where I am. I can acknowledge he knows and sees everything about me. But if I'm not seeing everything about me, what good is it going to do? He already knows everything, but I have a responsibility to ask. He also knows the motives behind my asking. And I want to think about that in James 4, in verses 1-3. From whence cometh wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your lusts that war in your members? Ye lust and have not. Ye kill and desire to have and obtain not. What are my motives for what I'm seeking? It is good to have a level of self-preservation. But living in a state of constantly self-serving is not always good. And God cannot always honor and bless that. There are times you compromise and change things because God shows you it's best. To constantly persist in what I want with the saying, well, God knows everything, and he knows this desire of my heart. What if that desire is a skew of his plan for my life? I'm not being open and honest about where I am. Doesn't matter if he knows everything. I'm not admitting everything about me, and I need to be cautious. Ye fight in war, yet ye have not. Because ye ask not. Ye ask and receive not, because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lust. So there are reasons why things don't work out. And I don't think that, when you read that verse, your mind can go to extreme situations. But they don't have to be extreme for me to need to improve. I could be pursuing something and I get it in my mind that this has got to be for me. This is how it's going to be. I have certain little plans and things I talk about with my wife and Rhonda Ray for if Lord willing, and for the coming years, if that's how things work out. But I leave it with the notion and understanding, Lord willing. Because I could get a plan in my head. I don't have anything horrible. There's nothing wrong with it. But what if God has a better plan? I need to be open-minded to that. I need to be understanding that he knows all and he knows best. I can't, and we know this. Anybody has an intellectual understanding. You can't ask for something from a vengeful, hateful heart. I can't have a bad attitude and expect the Lord to get behind the motives for whatever I may ask him for in the heat of that moment of anger. Asking for something in the heat of a moment of anger can be a bad situation. And he already knows everything anyway. He knows the motives behind it, doesn't he? I may be asking amiss. And thankfully, he may not. Nothing may come of that. And I hope no one here would battle asking God for selfish things just to make, there's a level of self-preservation that's normal and healthy. I'm not taking away from that. But I don't want to just do things just as the phrase is, to look good before others, or things that profit me without regard for what might happen to someone else and how they could be affected by it. To do that is self-serving. The motives behind it are not good. I need to know what God wants. He knows all. He sees with that. There's that old song, The Great Big Eye Watching You. But he already knows, and he knows the motives that I have behind the choices that I pursue and the decisions that I want to make. And I'm thankful he may understand that we're struggling and when we're in the heat of a battle. But and this is just an individual who's lived a little bit of life, I would be very cautious about what I ask God for if I'm in the midst of a deep struggle. Because everything we're dealing with becomes a potential impact on the choices we pursue. And in the midst of something that's a deep struggle, God, help me to be very cautious what I ask God for. I know he knows all and he sees all, but what are my motives behind asking? Would I have asked for that had I not been in the midst of that trial that was burdening me? I also want to be cautious, though he's all-knowing, about what I promise in the midst of a terrible trial. And you think of kids who want something. They make their parents all kinds of promises in the heat of their desire for what they want. But when it really hits, following through on those promises can be very, very difficult as a child. They didn't realize all the work that's involved with getting that puppy. But in the heat of really wanting it, I want this, I need 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 this. So I get it. Oh, God worked it out, right? I need to be careful, don't I? Be very cautious in the heat of a very difficult trial, or even in sometimes when life is really good, to be very mindful. He knows all, and I better be relying on him. I'm glad God knows everything, but I want to be open and honest before him about myself. I'm putting this on me first. And I want to make my petitions with understanding that he knows best. I am not afraid to sprinkle in there, Lord, I think I would like to pursue this, but not my will, yours. And if it's not meant to be, then I just pray he'll give me caution and wisdom. Sometimes he works things out in the way we need them, but it's not the way we want them. And it is very easy as a human being. It doesn't mean you're sinning. You pursue a want while he's already provided what you need, because it doesn't feel as good or feel as fulfilling as what we may want. God knows best, doesn't he? And sometimes just the simple act of waiting can save us a lot of heartache. Let me be honest about myself before God. Do I need to put the brakes on in a situation and say, hold on, I think I need to wait up? So I would hope that what I've shared and maybe the scriptures I've read, I try to use them. I hope they kind of provide an introduction to the topic that came to me several days ago. I read an article online. I actually posted it on Facebook. Rhonda Ray may have been the only person who read it. That's okay. But I read this article online, and it was about the importance of, and this is the word I want to be before God, transparency. The official definition I found of transparency, there was a few, but these are the two that I chose to kind of read. The quality of allowing, I thought this one was kind of neat in light of if you take a spiritual application. The quality of allowing light to pass through so that objects behind can be distinctly seen. When God applies his light to my life, what does he see behind me as my motive? Am I being tempted to involve myself something selfishly? Or maybe my motives are pure and he knows, but I want to be transparent before him. Him to see me as I am and show me who I am so that I can proceed from there. The other definition, the quality of being easy to perceive or detect. Something that is transparent. You can see it pretty easily, pick up on it pretty easily. It's not hidden. It's very aware. You're very aware of it. And I thought about that. My need as an individual to reflect on, I need to be transparent with God. Well, we already knows everything. Well, that's true. but I need his light to shine on me and show me where I am spiritually. Who am I? How does he see me? I need to be transparent with God. He already knows everything, but what do we know, any of us here, and we're all adults? What do you know that's present in any strong relationship? And transparency. You have to have a level of understanding and openness with each other. I need his light to pass through me and evaluate my intentions. I need, now these were my self-reflections, his guidance and light to make sure that my motives are clearly seen and understood, to apply what I read about the definition. I want to make sure that I see myself the way he sees me. Because I could go off on a rabbit trail thinking I'm doing good, and again, I may not be doing anything quote unquote bad, but it may not be best. I need transparency before the Lord. I'm a human being. I can get my own thoughts in my own way if I'm not careful. Transparency was the topic of that article I read, and for sake of, since I'm referencing it, and this is live, you can tell I'm a school teacher, I will give credit to my source, The Power of Transparency and Effective Leadership, on and by Reich.com. If you would like to read it, message me, I will send you the article. But I enjoyed reading it because as I reflected, I recognized what a blessing, and not everybody can say this, sadly, I've heard, that I can say that I have worked for people throughout my career who modeled transparency in their leadership style in the workplace. I have been very fortunate, and they've modeled it before me as an employee, and I have come to take it kind of for granted because you hear other people talk about situations, and I've never had to deal with any of that. I have worked for people who've been open, honest, and clear with their intentions. Well, isn't that how God treats us? He's open, he's honest, and he's clear of his expectations. But am I being transparent before him? Am I embracing his expectations and his intentions? Or am I clouding things up because I don't really want to admit I have a problem with something? Or I don't really want to admit something is a struggle for me. If that's the case, I'm not being transparent before God. I'm not allowing his leadership, per se, to guide me and direct me in my spiritual walk. Do you think I've agreed with every decision or conclusion that was presented to me as an employee? Well, of course not. I'm a human. But this is what I know. For the most part, I understood where the people were coming from when they arrived at their decisions and conclusions. Whether I agreed or not was irrelevant because it wasn't my place. But I understood where they were coming from. Why did I understand it? They demonstrated transparency. It was clear, and I'm so thankful God does that in what he expects for us in our life. But who can muddy his transparency? Me. If I'm not cautious, if I'm not willing to be transparent with myself and say, okay, Lord, I'm struggling with this. I think I need some help. And I thought about this. If someone were sitting here listening and you ask the question to your own brain, why is he discussing transparency when God sees everything anyway? Well, parents sometimes know that a child has a desire, but does that mean the parent always immediately addresses it and takes care of it? Sometimes they wait to be what? Ask. The parent wants to see if the desire is important enough to the child to pursue, for them to even mention it. And God has given us the power of free will. I have a duty to seek him and be transparent and open before him. We read that verse about, that I need to seek him, ask and knock and all those things. I can receive, but I also may need to ask. I need to be transparent, open to him, asking him to shine his light upon my life and let me see what he sees. And I have to be honest about what that shows. If I'm not, then I'm not going to get any further. If I'm not willing to change, if I'm struggling, I need to be transparent with God. In my job experiences, I have found if there was a need at our school, the leadership has been transparent. Now, did that mean they called people out directly in a meeting per se? No. In a job place, that would be possibly unethical and get you on Channel 9. You're not going to do that. That's called confidentiality issues. They don't call people out per se. Transparency doesn't mean that I know everything. That's not necessary. And transparency doesn't mean that I tell everything. That's not necessary. Far from it. It may not be legal for me to know, if I'm using the job place as an example, it may not be legal for me to know everything. Some issues in the workplace involve confidentiality and privacy concerns with personnel. Hence, Those specifics can't be discussed. Plus, they're none of my business if I'm unaffected by that individual situation. They're none of my business. So I thought, to be clear, transparency doesn't mean that I know all the details of a situation I've encountered, but I know enough to operate as I should as an employee. I know what I need to know to do what my boss expects of me. The boss may have needed to know some things about somebody, but Danny didn't. I mean, I'm being fair. It was none of my concern. So I can be transparent with God about issues of my heart. Him, we can have full transparency, right? I may not feel that I can talk to another person, but I'm thankful I can always be honest and open before the Lord. But the devil can say, oh, he already knows anyway. Ask and ye shall receive. If you need help, there's no shame in saying, Lord, I need help. I can transparently seek his love and guidance. I can ask him to search my heart and see if there's anything within there that I need to change. I may not have to tell another human being about it. Transparency doesn't mean I tell everything. Actually, you can tell too much and cause somebody else to struggle. You can cause somebody else problems. It may involve things that ought not to be shared. I mean, we live in the real world, right? Sometimes in the name of saying we're being transparent, all we're being is a talebearer. And I need to be cautious. God can give us enough sense to balance what's expected and needed from us. I can go to an altar to pray about something, but transparency doesn't mean, just like in the workplace, that you share every intimate detail of a struggle. Again, that may be inappropriate. That may not be something that's necessary. Far from it. We can have privacy with humans and still be transparent with God. He can help us. I can seek help without telling all of my business. In Jeremiah 17:10, I, the Lord, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doings. Proverbs 21:2, every way of man is right in his own eyes. I'm not being transparent if that's how I'm living. Well, I'm going to do this because God's word says this. But what if God's saying, well, you're not exercising that the way I intend you to? You're going to hurt people, Danny. Then I need to be careful, don't I? I need to be transparent with him. I need to be cautious. Do you think everything I could say to a student is appropriate? No. They're children. I mean, I talk to them about issues and I try to help them. They struggle with impulse because they're 12. They do not have an adult brain. And when they do stuff and they say stuff sometimes that's kind of, whatever, I got so amused in my head. Now, I was cautious how I handled it. A little boy in class, he was trying really hard. I can't help but chuckle. And he kind of has a scowl. I can do it. I'm not quite sure why he looks from the side. I'm like, honey, you're 12. You're not the Godfather. I mean, why are you, quit doing it. But I don't say anything. He's just a 12-year-old boy. So one day he's sitting there. And, you got to be cautious when you're helping them. You want to help them, but not embarrass them. So he's sitting there, and I was trying to help him understand. And I can tell for a moment, I think he was getting a little overwhelmed. And I was getting side glance, Sister Tammy. And in my inside, I just wanted to chuckle. He was so cute sitting there doing that. So I was like, okay, buddy, you good? So I backed off. He needed me to back off. Now, there's a lot of things I could have said and done. What good would have come from it? Nothing. You got to use some wisdom. I, the Lord, search the heart. I try the reins, even to give every man according to his way and according to the fruit of his doings. Proverbs 21:2, every way of man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord pondereth the hearts. So I'm just using work as an example. We can apply it to our life however it applies, if it even applies to you. If my principal discusses an issue at faculty meeting that we need to address as a staff, guess what I don't have to do? I don't have to rush her after the meeting. Oh, who did that? What happened? Shut up, Danny. I don't need to know those details. Here's what I need to know. I need to know what's expected of me as a result of what she's seen as a concern. And those concerns have been addressed. Or the actions or lack of actions from somebody I may work with. My principal has been fair and transparent by addressing the concern. And that's all she owes me. And I think about how the Lord is fair. He will address concerns with us. But if I'm not open to who I really am and where I really am, what is you try to help somebody in your own family or your friendships or your spousal relationships, and you hit that wall. They can't see the problem. How much of your talking will matter after that? Probably not a lot. And it's frustrating, isn't it? But if I'm not being honest with myself, how can I really get the help I need? God knows and sees everything, even our hearts, but every healthy relationship has a level of transparency. In marriage, you need transparency. A lack of transparency leads to a lack of trust. There is not a level of transparency. And I'm no expert. I'm still new at marriage. But I've had long-term friendships. I've had people in my life. I've been very fortunate, people who care deeply about me. I haven't told them everything. Don't need to. But a lack of transparency can lead to a lack of trust. A lack of transparency in a marriage, I'm just using that as an example. It can be any relationship, whether at work or whatever. It disrupts unity. You cannot be on board with someone if you do not communicate, agree upon clear expectations, and have a healthy level of transparency with one another. How can you be on board? You don't even know what the other one's doing. There is no transparency. And I used Rhonda Ray. If Rhonda Ray found out, because she has the app, that I was going around making all kinds of purchases without her knowledge because she sees the charges popping up on our account, then she really needs to sit me down and have a serious conversation with me. I have faltered in transparency with us. I don't want to make a large purchase without her being on board and without being transparent with her. And here's my disclaimer. Each couple have their own ways of dealing with that. Money. I will say this. I was warned before I married by a coworker. Money can be one of the biggest stressors in a marriage. That was a warning I got from a coworker. It can be a major stressor. You got to be on board with whatever plan you have and be transparent and work through that. You have to, I think you have to. If you don't, then the stress that comes, God be with you. But I'm just using this example as it pertains to Rhonda Ray and me. I didn't want anybody to misinterpret. I'm not insinuating she and I are the quote unquote, the way to do it. We're not the right way. We're one way. Does that make sense? So to be clear, I'm just using us as an example of how things would pertain to us as a couple. You work out your own relationships. My point is Rhonda Ray and I are transparent about this is just one example of something, about our expenses and financial commitments. We want to trust and have unity in our relationship because those purchases are not just mine. We function as a unit together. We hold each other accountable. God holds me accountable, doesn't he? He does it by being transparent of his expectations of me. Do I fall in line or do I deny? A lack of transparency in that area, if a couple doesn't have their own situation worked out, I'm just using finances as an example, can lead to major stress. Rhonda Ray could find herself asking herself this: why is he being so secretive? What's he not want me to know? Is the devil real? You better believe it. Now she's worried. Now she's battling thoughts she would not have battled if I had maintained transparency like I should have. All because of a lack of transparency on my part, and that's shame on me. That's avoidable. I can't get mad at her for being bothered because I created the situation. I have to own it and face it. And the same in fairness to God. If I'm not being transparent before him, admitting my faults or admitting my failures or admitting where I need help or admitting where I have strengths and he wants me to step up, whatever the case is, I can't get mad at him if I'm not prospering. He's been transparent. Who hasn't been honest with himself? Me, as a result of God's transparency. I have to own it and face it. That same is true with transparency in my relationship with God. If he shows me a need, I need to own it and face it. He'll help me. Just Rhonda Ray and I have a level of transparency in our marriage. But does she know every struggle I have? No, that can become unhealthy and Rhonda Ray and overburden. She does know most of them, I guess. But we have to have a healthy caution with that, or you overburden your spouse. Does she know every thought that passes through my mind? No. Healthy transparency, and I'm sure y'all know this, doesn't require she know every little teeny thing. And it doesn't require I tell every little teeny thing, though I guess I kind of do mostly to her. But anyway, not everything, though, I don't, I promise. But if I treated a major decision as a secret, like just using the finance things, she would likely and should start to be quite concerned about what's going on in our relationship. Is God looking at me concerned about my transparency with him? Now, I see you struggling here, Danny, but you just won't admit it to me. I see it. I can tell you're having a problem. I've shown you, I've been transparent, I've been clear. Why won't you admit it? God knows if I know, doesn't he? He already has, he already understands. The same type of situation, she could have a problem thinking about that with us. And I think about work. My principal, and trust me, she don't. My principal, I get tickled. She doesn't. Do you think, Brother Mark, that my principal at every faculty meeting has to shout at us, "I'm the principal"? No, she's secure in her leadership and her authority. She is transparent with us. And the same type of situation can happen in other relationships, and I thought of marriage. I don't have to say to Rhonda, "I'm your husband." Duh, she married me. I'm not insecure in the role I have in our marriage. Rhonda Ray, because I'm still learning, and God bless her, she said, "I do" to me. You pray for her. Rhonda Ray doesn't have to shout at me, "I'm your wife," because she's not insecure in the position she has in our relationship. There's transparency, which builds trust, which builds unity. In Proverbs 11:3, the integrity of the upright shall guide them, but the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them. I have a duty, a personal responsibility, to be transparent before God, so I will live with integrity. That's how you help other people. Integrity, knowing that they're looking and recognizing you're doing the best you know, the best you understand with the understanding you got. You can't do much better than that. I have a duty to do that. Rhonda Ray and I yesterday, we were very fortunate to listen to the little dedication service. Pastor Allen mentioned it. It was very sweet. It would have been what a special opportunity, I'm sure, to get to be there. But it was precious. And it's just interesting because we can all watch something, and something might touch my heart that doesn't touch someone else's heart. So what touched my heart as I was watching the little proceedings? Brother Polston recognized and included the individuals who had attended the congregation before his congregation purchased the property. And I thought, that's precious. It was very precious, and that really touched my heart. A brother who attended the previous congregation, and now think about the idea I had on transparency. A brother who attended the previous congregation, and now he shared that he visits Brother Polston's congregation. He shared how they came to the conclusion they needed to sell the property, despite the fact that was a very challenging, difficult decision to make. Their congregation, he said, had dwindled. I think he said 5 people, if I remember correctly. And he shared that the Lord brought this thought to him. What if we are holding back another congregation that could grow and flourish by hanging on to the property? And I thought, wow, that's humility to a degree. Willingness to transparently say before God, is there another place you could bless here? And I'm sure if any of us get to visit, Brother Allen did. He was blessed, wasn't he? Pastor Allen shared. He shared a little bit about the story, Brother Polston did, of how they got it and so forth. And I just thought it was interesting to listen to, and I thought of that article. I remember Rhonda Ray, and I checked with her to make sure. As I was listening, I said, Rhonda, that reminds me of my article on transparency. God help me to be open and honest before him. I have a duty. Transparency leads to trust and unity. God wants me to be a trustworthy, unified vessel, relying on him and being open and honest to what he shows me. I want to be who God wants me to be. This is my last thing. God is transparent in his word about his expectations for us, and I deeply appreciate that. In Micah 6:8, he hath showed thee, O man, what is good. Has he showed me what is good? Am I listening to it? Am I being transparent? Am I showing that forth? And what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with God? God wants me to trust him. And God has never given me a reason not to. He's never given me a reason not to. God doesn't keep things secret from me that will help me. He's open and transparent and fair. God doesn't leave me wondering about his intentions. Instead, he's clear. God doesn't tell everyone but me. Instead, he's transparent. And I need to be transparent with God. I thought, if I'm struggling, it begins with me. I need to admit before God and be transparent and open that I have that struggle. If I think I have everything under control, but still see issues, I need to take it to God and see that I need to reevaluate my approach to whatever it is I think I have under control. And I'm so thankful God cares. He wants me to be successful, but if I can leave you with that thought, he wants me, you put it on me first if you want to. He wants me to be transparent with him. Brother Mark?
Man, good, very good lesson this morning. And, I thought it kept coming to me about leaning not to our own understanding. I tell you, we try to reason things out, or I do too much in my own mind, and I've seen people do it time and time again without having God's word on it. But God will take care of us if we'll follow him and really humble our heart. All right, we'll take a little bit of a break, and then we'll move on with the service shortly.